On a freezing winter night, a billionaire notices a little girl who doesn't beg, doesn't cry, she just waits. One quiet choice pulls them into a battle of trust, power, and hope, where silence speaks louder than money, and a child's fragile belief changes everything forever. Ethan Cross stood alone in the glass crown of his Boston penthouse 40 floors above a city that never looked back. Below him, the Charles River reflected winter lights like broken stars. Traffic moved in clean, obedient lines. Everything was efficient, controlled, predictable, just like the life Ethan had built. At 49, he was one of the most powerful men in American tech, founder of Crosswave Systems, featured on magazine covers, quoted in economics textbooks. His calendar was full for the next 3 years, and yet the room behind him was silent. No laughter, no footsteps, no reason to turn around. Ethan loosened his tie and stared at his reflection in the glass. The silver at his temples had appeared quietly, the way grief does without asking permission. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thin, worn photograph. A little girl with dark eyes and an uneven smile. Lila, his daughter, gone 7 winters ago. The city celebrated progress. Ethan measured time by absence. A notification buzzed on his phone, another charity gala reminder. Another room full of applause and polite distance. He dismissed it without reading. Tonight, he didn't have the strength to perform generosity. Behind him, the penthouse lights glowed warm but untouched. The furniture was perfect, untouched, like a museum that no longer remembered what it was built for. Ethan slipped the photo back into his pocket. Just air, he murmured to no one. Minutes later, his driver waited downstairs, engine running, heat on high. As Ethan stepped into the elevator, he felt the familiar hollow calm settle in, the kind that comes when you've learned how to survive, but forgotten why. The car moved smoothly through downtown Boston, passing storefronts wrapped in holiday lights and windows filled with things people bought for someone else. Ethan watched it all through the glass without seeing any of it. December had always been like this, sharp, clean, unforgiving. The kind of cold that didn't shout. It waited. At a red light near Beacon Street, the car slowed. Snow drifted lazily from the sky, soft enough to look harmless, cold enough to sting. That's when Ethan noticed her. At first, she was just a shape near a boutique entrance. Too small, too still. Then the headlights shifted, and the shape became a child. A little girl stood pressed close to the wall, hands wrapped around the straps of a faded backpack. She wasn't asking for anything. She wasn't crying. She wasn't moving. A security guard spoke to her, not cruelly, but firmly. His gestures were practiced, efficient. He pointed down the sidewalk, somewhere else. The girl nodded. She always nodded. The light turned green. The car began to move. "Stop," Ethan said suddenly. The driver hesitated. "Sir, pull over." The car rolled to the curb. Snow kissed the hood. Ethan didn't think. He opened the door, the cold cutting straight through his tailored coat. Up close, the girl looked younger than he'd thought. 8, maybe. Her jacket was too big. Her shoes were mismatched. Her face was clean but tired in a way no child's should be. She looked at him, not hopeful, not afraid, just careful. "Hello," Ethan said quietly, lowering himself so they were eye to eye. "I'm Ethan." The girl hesitated, then softly, "Ivy." Her voice was steady. That unsettled him more than tears would have. The city moved on behind them, unaware that something fragile had just been noticed. Snow gathered on Ethan's shoulders as he stayed crouched in front of Ivy. She didn't step back, but she didn't step forward either. Every inch of her seemed trained to wait for the moment adults changed their minds. "You look cold," Ethan said. "I'm okay," Ivy replied immediately. The answer came too fast. Ethan glanced at her hands. Red. Bare. She was holding her backpack like it was a door that could close if she needed it to. Are you waiting for someone? He asked. Ivy shook her head once, just resting. The guard shifted awkwardly a few feet away, pretending not to watch. The street hummed. Life continued. Ethan took off his coat slowly, making sure she could see every movement. He held it out, not toward her body, but toward the space between them. You don't have to take it, he said. I just thought you might want it. Ivy studied the coat as if it might disappear. Then she reached for it carefully, like borrowing something precious. Thank you, she said. Not because she was told to, because she meant it. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. When did you last eat? He asked gently. She thought for a moment. Earlier, another answer designed not to worry anyone. There's a cafe right there, Ethan said, nodding toward the corner. We could sit inside where it's warm. My driver would stay with us. Doors open. Ivy looked past him to the car, to the driver, to the light spilling from the cafe window. She didn't say yes right away. Instead, she asked the question that mattered. You won't be mad if I say no? Right, Ethan swallowed. No, he said. I won't. After a long pause, Ivy nodded once. Okay, she said quietly, but just for a little while. And in that moment, without either of them knowing it, everything began to change. The cafe was small, bright, and nearly empty, one of those places that smelled like coffee and quiet patience. Ethan held the door open and waited. Ivy stepped inside on her own. No pulling, no guiding hand. Just a choice. She chose the booth closest to the window. Ethan sat across from her, leaving the seat beside him empty on purpose. He placed his phone face down on the table as if to say this moment wouldn't be interrupted by power or urgency. What do you like? He asked. Ivy looked at the menu, then back at him. Whatever's easiest. Ethan smiled faintly. Then we'll make it easy. Hot chocolate arrived first. Ivy wrapped both hands around the cup and waited. Steam rose between them, fogging the space like a small temporary cloud. You don't have to drink it, Ethan said. I want to, Ivy replied. She took a careful sip. Her shoulders relaxed just a little. Ethan noticed the way she drank slowly, not from politeness, but from habit, as if rushing might make it disappear. Do you go to school? He asked, keeping his voice neutral. Sometimes, she said. Depends. On what she didn't say. Ethan nodded, not pressing. He had learned in boardrooms and grief alike that silence often told the truth better than questions. Outside, snow pressed gently against the window. Inside, Ivy's backpack rested at her feet untouched. You're not like the others, she said suddenly. Ethan blinked. Others grown-ups, Ivy clarified. They usually talk fast or promise things right away, and that worries you. She nodded. Promises don't last. Ethan folded his hands on the table. Then I won't make one. That caught her attention. Instead of relief, Ivy looked curious. For the first time since he'd seen her, she met his eyes fully. The snow thickened as they left the cafe, turning the street into something quieter, slower, almost unreal. Ethan walked beside Ivy, not ahead of her. The driver followed a few steps back, visible, present. Nothing hidden. They stopped near the car. Ivy hesitated. This is usually where people say goodbye, she said. It can be, Ethan replied, or it can be where they stop and think. She studied the car, the warm glow inside the city beyond it. Thinking usually takes longer than people want. Ethan opened the back door and let the heat spill out into the night. I have a place, he said carefully. It's warm. There's food. A real bed. Ivy stiffened, not with fear, but calculation. For how long, she asked. Tonight, Ethan answered immediately. Just tonight. Tomorrow we talk to people whose job it is to help kids. Together. She searched his face for a trick. Found none. And if I say no, then I'll make sure you get somewhere safe tonight anyway, he said. No strings. The silence stretched. Snow landed on Ivy's hair, melting slowly. "Do I have to be quiet there?" she asked. Ethan frowned slightly. "Why would you?" "Some places don't like noise," she said. "Even breathing noise." He felt something in his chest tighten. "You can breathe," he said firmly. "As much as you want." Ivy nodded, then almost shyly. "Is there a bathroom?" "Yes." "And a light I can turn off myself?" "Yes." She took a breath. A real one. "Okay," she said. "Just one night." Inside the car, Ivy sat close to the door, her backpack still in her lap. Ethan didn't comment. As they pulled away, Ivy looked out the window. "Mr. Ethan," she asked. "Yes, you didn't ask me to say thank you." He smiled softly. "You don't owe me anything." For the first time, Ivy leaned back against the seat. The penthouse lights came on automatically, bathing the space in a warm, steady glow. Ivy stopped just inside the door. She didn't step forward. The room was large, open, quiet, too quiet. Floors polished. Furniture arranged with intention. Nothing out of place. "Am I allowed to touch things?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan said. "And you don't have to ask." She considered this, then carefully placed her backpack on the floor. That alone felt like trust. "Mrs. Rowan appeared from the hallway, her silver hair neatly tied back, eyes kind and alert. "Oh," she said softly. "Hello there." Ivy straightened immediately. "Hi, this is Mrs. Rowan," Ethan said. "She helps run the house. She's very good at it." Mrs. Rowan smiled. "And you must be Ivy?" "I made soup, in case anyone felt cold tonight." Ivy looked up at Ethan, surprised. He nodded. "I told her you might." They moved slowly through the space. Ivy noticed everything, the echo of her footsteps, the soft rug, the framed photographs turned face down on a shelf. "Whose room is that?" she asked, pointing. "No one's," Ethan replied. "Not anymore." He showed her the guest room. Blue walls, a lamp, a blanket folded neatly at the foot of the bed. Ivy touched the mattress with 2 fingers. "It's soft," she said, almost confused. "You can sleep with the light on," Ethan added. "Or off. Or halfway." She sat on the bed, then looked up at him. "You're not staying in here?" she asked. "No," he said. "But I'll be right outside if you need anything." She nodded, then quietly, "Thank you for not hurrying." Ethan paused at the door. "Good night, Ivy," he said. As the door closed gently behind him, he leaned against the wall and exhaled. For the first time in years, the house was listening. Sleep did not come easily. Ivy lay stiff beneath the heavy blanket, eyes open, counting the seconds between unfamiliar sounds. The hum of the building, the distant sigh of pipes, the soft tick of a clock she hadn't seen. Every place had rules. She just didn't know them yet. After a long while, she sat up and swung her legs over the side of the bed. The carpet was warm. That surprised her. She pressed her toes into it, testing whether the comfort would vanish if she moved too much. It didn't. The door was slightly open, just as Ethan had promised. Light spilled gently from the hallway. "Mr. Ethan," she whispered. No answer. She waited, heart steady but alert, then tried again, softly. "Yes." Ethan's voice came instantly from somewhere close. He appeared in the doorway, not rushing, not alarmed. He wasn't wearing his suit anymore, just a sweater. Human. Ordinary. "I couldn't sleep," Ivy said, prepared to be told that was a problem. "That happens," Ethan replied. "Would you like some water?" She nodded. In the kitchen, Mrs. Rowan had left a small lamp on its glow, warm and unassuming. Ethan poured water into a glass and slid it toward Ivy. She drank carefully, then held the glass in both hands, grounding herself. "Do you live here alone?" she asked. "Yes." She thought about that. "It's very quiet for one person." He smiled faintly. "It didn't used to be." Ivy didn't ask more. She sensed that some questions needed permission. After a moment, she spoke again. If I fall asleep, you won't move me, right? No, Ethan said immediately. I won't. She studied his face, searching for the crack where words usually slipped through. Finding none, Ivy nodded. Okay, she said. Then I think I can sleep. Ethan walked her back to the room. He didn't tuck her in, he didn't hover, he stood at the doorway. As Ivy lay down, she murmured almost to herself, this place doesn't hurry. Ethan stayed until her breathing slowed, and for the first time in years, he didn't leave the hallway when night fell. Morning arrived quietly filtered through pale winter light. Ivy woke before the house did. She sat up slowly, half expecting the room to be gone, but it wasn't. The blue walls were still there. The blanket was still warm. Her backpack sat untouched in the corner. She exhaled. In the kitchen, Mrs. Rowan hummed softly while flipping pancakes. The sound was gentle, almost shy. Oh, she said when she saw Ivy. Good morning, dear. Ivy froze, unsure of the rules again. Good morning, she replied, polite and careful. Ethan appeared moments later, hair uncombed, sleeves rolled up. He looked different. Less like the man from last night. More like someone who lived here. Did you sleep? He asked. Yes, Ivy said, then corrected herself. Mostly. That counts, he smiled. She climbed onto a stool at the counter, hands folded in her lap. Mrs. Rowan placed a plate in front of her, 2 pancakes neatly stacked. You don't have to eat if you're not hungry, Ethan said. I am, Ivy replied quickly, then paused. But I can wait. For what? In case someone else wants them. Ethan exchanged a glance with Mrs. Rowan. There's more, she said gently. As much as you want. Ivy stared at the plate for a long moment before picking up her fork. She ate slowly, methodically, like someone making sure the moment didn't end too fast. What happens today? She asked without looking up. Ethan leaned against the counter. Today we talk. We make plans. Nothing happens without you knowing, she nodded. Okay. After breakfast, Ivy wandered the living room, stopping in front of a shelf where a single photo frame lay face down. She didn't touch it. Instead, she turned back to Ethan. You don't ask many questions, she observed. Do you want me to? She considered. Not yet. Then I won't. Ivy smiled, not wide, not bright. Just enough. For the first time, morning didn't feel like a deadline. Later, as snow melted into quiet slush outside, Ivy sat on the couch with her legs tucked beneath her, watching Ethan make a phone call across the room. His voice was calm, careful, measured. Yes, he said. I understand. I'll wait. She listened without pretending not to. When he finished, she asked, was that someone important? Yes, Ethan replied. Someone whose job is to help. Do helpers always help? Ivy asked. Ethan didn't answer right away. Sometimes they try, he said finally. Sometimes they don't listen enough. She nodded, accepting this as truth. After a pause, Ivy spoke again quietly but clearly. My name usually changes places, she said. Ethan turned fully toward her. What do you mean people forget it? She explained. Or they stop using it. Sometimes I stop using it too. I won't, Ethan said. Ivy stays Ivy. Her fingers tightened briefly in her sleeves. You can change your mind, she said, not accusing, just stating a pattern. I can, Ethan agreed, but I don't plan to. She looked at him for a long moment, then asked the question she'd been holding since the night before. If I leave, will you remember me? Ethan crossed the room and sat across from her, not too close. I remember people, he said softly. Even when they leave. That's not what I meant. He understood then. No, he said gently. You won't disappear. Ivy's eyes filled not with tears, but with something heavier. Relief, maybe, or fear of believing. She swallowed. I don't need forever, she said. Just longer than usual. Ethan nodded. Let's start there. Outside, the city moved on. Inside, a child leaned back against the couch, testing the weight of safety. And somewhere between a promise not made and a promise kept, hope took its first careful breath. Ethan made the calls in the study, the door left deliberately open. He wanted Ivy to hear not the details, but the tone. Calm, respectful. No secrets whispered behind closed doors. "I'm calling about temporary care," he said into the phone. "Yes, tonight was emergency shelter. Yes, I understand the protocol. I want everything documented." Ivy sat on the rug outside the doorway, knees pulled to her chest, listening without looking like she was listening. Mrs. Rowan folded laundry nearby, moving quietly, giving space without withdrawing. Ethan ended the call and stepped out. "They'll come by later," he said. "Just to talk. Nothing scary?" Ivy nodded. "Talking's okay." He smiled slightly. "Good." They moved to the living room. Afternoon light softened the edges of the space. Ivy traced a finger along the seam of the couch, grounding herself. "Do you do this a lot?" she asked. "Do what help people without telling them what to say?" Ethan thought for a moment. "No," he said honestly. "This might be new for me." She accepted that. A second call came in. This time Ethan's posture shifted, not tense, but guarded. "Yes," he said. "She's here. She's safe." Ivy glanced up. "No," Ethan continued, voice steady. "I didn't make promises I can't keep." The call ended. "Was that your wife?" Ivy asked, careful not to assume. "Yes." "Is she mad?" Ethan exhaled slowly. "She's worried." "Worried people usually get loud," Ivy said. "Sometimes," Ethan replied. "Sometimes they get quiet first." Ivy nodded as if filing this away for later. "I don't want to cause trouble," she said after a moment. "You haven't," Ethan said immediately. "But I could," she insisted. "I always do." Eventually, Ethan crouched so they were eye level again. "Trouble doesn't come from children," he said. "It comes from adults who don't listen." She studied his face, then looked away. "Okay," she said. "I'll try believing that." Ethan didn't push. Belief, he was learning, had to arrive on its own. Outside, the sky dimmed. Inside, a decision still unnamed began to take shape. Margaret Cross arrived just before dusk. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, precise and familiar. She stopped short when she saw Ivy sitting at the dining table, coloring quietly with pencils Mrs. Rowan had set out. For a brief moment, Margaret said nothing. Then, "Ethan," she said, calm, controlled. "May I speak with you?" "Of course," Ethan replied, "but not behind closed doors." Margaret's eyes flickered, surprised, then displeased. She lowered her voice anyway. "This is highly inappropriate," she said. "You can't bring a child into our home without discussion." Ivy's pencil paused. She didn't look up. Ethan kept his voice even. "She's here for the night. Everything is being handled legally." Margaret glanced at Ivy, then away, as if proximity alone might blur a boundary she needed intact. "She looks clean," Margaret said, choosing the word carefully. Ethan stiffened. "She's a child." "I know that," Margaret replied quickly. "And that's exactly the problem. Children complicate things." Ivy stood. "Mrs. Cross?" she said politely. Margaret turned, startled. "I can go to my room," Ivy continued. "I don't want to be in the way." The room went still. "No," Ethan said firmly. "You're not in the way." Margaret looked between them, something unreadable crossing her face. "This isn't what we agreed to," she said quietly. "We didn't agree on much lately," Ethan replied. Margaret's jaw tightened. "This is about Lila, isn't it?" Ethan's breath caught, but he didn't raise his voice. "This is about Ivy," he said. "She needs a place to land. And what about us?" Margaret asked. "What about the life we built?" Ethan looked at Ivy, standing very straight, very small. "This is part of it," he said. Margaret said nothing more. She turned and walked toward the hallway. "I'll be staying elsewhere tonight," she said over her shoulder. "We'll discuss this properly." When she was gone, The silence felt heavier but clearer. "I'm sorry," Ivy whispered. Ethan shook his head. "You didn't do anything wrong?" She nodded, though her eyes said she wasn't sure. Adults she knew often said that right before leaving. Night settled gently over the penthouse, slower than before. Ivy sat on her bed knees, tucked under her chin, listening to the building breathe. The door was open again. The hallway light was dim but present. Ethan knocked once. Soft. "May I come in?" he asked. She nodded. He sat on the chair near the window, not on the bed, respecting the space she'd claimed as hers even temporarily. "She left because of me," Ivy said, without preamble. "No," Ethan replied. "She left because adults sometimes don't know how to share space with change." Ivy frowned. "That sounds like a nice way to say it." "It's the honest way," he said. She considered that. "Will she come back if I go?" Ivy asked. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. "I don't know," he said, "but I won't ask you to leave to make that happen." Ivy's shoulders relaxed just a fraction. "That matters," she said. They sat in silence for a while. "Do you read stories?" Ivy asked suddenly. "I used to," Ethan said. "A long time ago." "Could you read one now?" she asked. "Just a short one." Ethan nodded. He picked up a book Mrs. Rowan had placed on the nightstand earlier. A simple story. Gentle words. As he read, Ivy's breathing slowed. Her fingers loosened their grip on the blanket. Halfway through, she murmured, "You're not rushing." "I told you," he said softly. "This house doesn't hurry anymore." By the time the story ended, Ivy was asleep. Ethan stayed a moment longer, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. In the quiet after, he realized something had shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but enough to change the direction of everything that came next. Morning came with a different weight. Not the sharp urgency Ethan was used to: meetings, alerts, numbers, but something softer, something that waited. Sunlight slipped through the tall windows and rested gently on the kitchen counter. Mrs. Rowan was already awake, moving quietly, humming a tune without words. When Ethan entered, she looked up and smiled. "She's still sleeping," Mrs. Rowan said. Peacefully. Ethan nodded, relief passing through him like breath after holding it too long. "She didn't wake during the night." "Not once," she replied. "That's rare for children who've had to stay alert." Ethan absorbed that without comment. When Ivy finally appeared, her hair slightly tangled, oversized sweater sleeves pulled down over her hands, she paused at the threshold, like someone unsure whether she was still welcome. "Good morning," Ethan said gently. She searched his face. Found no change. "Good morning," she replied. Breakfast was unhurried. Pancakes again, this time with fruit. Ivy ate a little faster today, though she still stopped often, as if listening for a rule that hadn't been spoken yet. "What day is it?" she asked. "Tuesday," Ethan replied. She nodded. "Tuesdays are usually moving days." Ethan's hand stilled on his coffee cup. "Not today," he said. "Today is a talking day." She tilted her head. "Talking days don't end suddenly, no," he said. "They're meant to stretch." Ivy seemed to test the word. Stretch. After breakfast, Ethan showed her the study. The shelves of books, the clean desk, the framed photo turned face down. "That's Lila," Ivy said quietly. Ethan looked at her, surprised. "How did you know she looks like you?" Ivy replied, "but happier." He swallowed. She was. Ivy didn't ask more. Instead, she moved closer to the window. "You're sad," she said, not accusing. "Yes," Ethan answered, "but not because of you." She nodded. Then after a pause, "That's new." Later, when the doorbell rang, Ivy stiffened. "It's okay," Ethan said quickly. "That's Mr. Brooks. He's a lawyer. He helps people make things official." "Official means papers," Ivy said. "Yes." She thought about that. "Papers can say you belong somewhere. They can." Ethan agreed. "But they can't make you feel it." The meeting was calm. No raised voices, no whispered tension. Ivy stayed in the room, coloring included but not pressured. When Mr. Brooks left, Ivy looked up. "You didn't send me away," she said. "Not today," Ethan replied. She smiled, small, real. Morning didn't leave. The pressure didn't arrive loudly. It came in emails, phone calls, carefully worded concerns. Ethan read them in the late afternoon. Ivy, sitting cross-legged nearby, building a small tower out of wooden blocks Mrs. Rowan had found in storage. "You're very focused," Ivy observed. "I have to be," Ethan replied. "Some people don't like surprises, neither do I," she said, adjusting a block. "But some surprises are quiet." Ethan smiled faintly. One call lasted longer than the others. When Ethan hung up, his shoulders were tense. "That sounded heavy," Ivy said. It was he admitted. "Because of me, yes," he said honestly. "But not in the way you think." She waited. "Some people believe kindness should follow rules very strictly," he continued. "Others believe rules should bend when kindness is needed. And you, I think listening comes first," he said. Ivy nodded. "Listening usually changes things." The door opened just before dinner. Margaret Cross stepped inside, coat still on posture, composed but eyes wary. Ivy froze. Margaret noticed immediately. "I didn't mean to startle you," she said. "It's okay," Ivy replied politely. Margaret turned to Ethan. "We need to talk." Ethan gestured toward the living room. "She stays." Margaret hesitated, then nodded. "Fine." They spoke carefully, voices low, no accusations, just distance laid bare. "This situation is being discussed," Margaret said. "People are watching." "They always are," Ethan replied. "And if they decide this is reckless, then I'll show them it isn't." Margaret glanced at Ivy again, really looking this time. "She's very quiet," she said. "I listen," Ivy said before Ethan could answer. Margaret blinked, caught off guard. "I see," she said softly. The silence stretched. "I'm not ready," Margaret said finally. "I can't step into this." "I won't force you," Ethan replied. Margaret nodded. "Then I'll step away. For now." When she left, Ivy's hands trembled slightly. "She doesn't hate me," Ivy said, half question. "No," Ethan replied. "She's afraid of hurting again." "People say that," Ivy murmured. "But then they still leave." "Yes," Ethan said. "Sometimes they do." Ivy nodded. "Thank you for not pretending otherwise." That night, Ivy didn't ask for a story. She asked, "Can tomorrow still be a talking day?" Ethan smiled. "As many as you need." Rain replaced snow overnight, washing the city into something softer. Ivy stood at the window in the morning, watching droplets race each other down the glass. "Do you ever wish you could pause things?" she asked. "All the time," Ethan replied. "Me too." After breakfast, Mr. Brooks returned with more papers. He spoke gently, explaining each step. "These documents don't lock anything in," he said. "They just make sure Ivy is protected while decisions are made." "Protected sounds good," Ivy said. "It is." Mr. Brooks smiled. When he left, Ivy held one of the blank pages. "My name is spelled right," she said. Ethan nodded. "I checked." She folded the page carefully and placed it in her backpack. In the afternoon, they went for a short walk. The city felt different now, not vast, but layered. People passed without noticing them. "That's good," Ivy said. "Sometimes being invisible feels safer." Ethan glanced at her. "You don't have to be invisible here." She considered that. At home, Ivy helped Mrs. Rowan stir soup. She laughed when it splashed. "I made a mess," she said quickly. "And the world kept spinning," Mrs. Rowan replied. That evening, Ivy sat beside Ethan on the couch, closer than before. "If I stay," she said carefully, "I might need to leave sometimes." "Yes," Ethan replied. "That's allowed. And if I leave, you'll still remember me." Ethan looked at her steady. "I will," he said, "no matter what." She leaned against him, then lightly, cautiously. The house held the moment. Not tightly. Not possessively. just enough. And in that quiet balance between staying and choosing, a fragile, lasting sense of home began to take root. The doorbell rang at 6:12 p.m., a time that felt too early for evening and too late for comfort. Ethan Cross didn't flinch, but Ivy did. Not dramatically, not fearfully, just a small tightening in her shoulders, like a string pulled gently taut. "It's Mr. Keller," Ethan said, keeping his voice steady. "He works with family services. His job is to make sure you're safe." Ivy nodded, once eyes on the floor. "Safe is a big word." "It can be," Ethan said, "but tonight it's a simple one." Mrs. Rowan appeared at the edge of the hallway, hands folded neatly in front of her. She didn't hover, but she didn't disappear. Presence without pressure, her specialty. Ethan opened the door. Michael Keller stood there with a messenger bag, wire-rimmed glasses, and a clipboard that looked heavier than his frame. Early 30s. Professional, polite. The kind of man who carried responsibility like a quiet bruise. "Mr. Cross," Keller said, offering his hand. "Thank you for meeting with me." "Of course," Ethan replied. "Come in." Keller stepped into the penthouse and paused, not because he was impressed, but because he was calibrating. He took in the clean floors, the warmth, the light. He noted the child's small shoes by the entryway, purple sneakers neatly placed. The refrigerator now held a single drawing held up with a magnet. A stick figure man and a stick figure girl beneath a crooked sun. Not expensive, not staged. Real. Ivy stood a few steps back, half hidden behind Mrs. Rowan, hands tucked into the sleeves of her sweater. "Hello," Ivy, Keller said gently. "I'm Michael. Is it okay if we talk for a little bit?" Ivy looked at Ethan first, not Keller. Ethan didn't answer for her. He only said, "You can say yes or no. Either answer is okay." That seemed to surprise Keller. It also seemed to steady Ivy. "Yes," she said softly. "A little bit." They sat in the living room. Ethan took the chair that kept him in view, but not looming. Keller sat at a respectful distance, angled toward Ivy instead of blocking her path. Mrs. Rowan placed a plate of cookies on the coffee table and then retreated to the kitchen, but within earshot. Keller opened his notebook, but he didn't start writing right away. "I want to be clear," he said. "You're not in trouble. No one is here to blame you for anything." Ivy's eyes flicked up. "People say that." Keller nodded. "I know. So I'll try something different. I'm not going to promise anything I can't control." Ethan's gaze tightened slightly, approval subtle. Keller continued, "I'm here to understand what this home feels like for you. That's it." Ivy sat very still. Then quietly, "It feels quiet." "Quiet can be good," Keller said. "Or lonely." Which one, Ivy thought. "Good. Mostly, and when it's not." Ivy's fingers twisted lightly in her sleeve. "When I think it might end." Keller looked down at his notebook, finally writing something, slow, careful strokes. Ethan's voice entered the space, even and calm. "We're working on a temporary guardianship plan through council. Everything documented." Keller nodded. "I saw the initial filing. It's thorough." Ethan didn't smile. "It's meant to be." Keller turned back to Ivy. "Do you have your own space here?" Ivy nodded. "A room. Blue walls. Do you feel like you can say when you're tired or hungry?" Ivy hesitated. Then she answered honestly. "I'm learning." Keller didn't push. "Who helps you here?" he asked. Ivy glanced toward the kitchen. "Mrs. Rowan and Mr. Ethan." Ethan's jaw tightened at the title, but he didn't correct her. Not yet. Keller asked one more question, one that landed softly but carried weight. "If you could choose one thing you want most right now, what would it be?" Ivy's eyes lowered. Her voice was barely a thread. "Time," she said. Keller's pen paused. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "She gets time." Keller looked at Ethan with a mix of respect and caution. "Mr. Cross, I'll be transparent. Your situation will face scrutiny. High-profile households always do. I understand, Ethan said. Judge me, not her. Keller nodded. I intend to. The visit ended with no drama, no sudden decisions. Keller stood at the door, slipping his notebook back into his bag. I'll submit my report, he said, and I'll be back for another check-in. Ivy didn't ask what the report meant. She didn't ask if she was being evaluated. She simply said, okay. After Keller left, Ethan closed the door slowly, like sealing something fragile in place. Ivy spoke first. He wrote things down. Yes, Ethan said. Does that mean he can take me away? Ethan crossed the room and knelt in front of her. It means adults are finally paying attention, he said, and I'm going to make sure they keep paying attention the right way. Ivy studied him, then nodded once. Okay, she whispered. I'll try to keep breathing. Ethan didn't tell her to be brave. He only said, that's enough. The next morning, Ethan returned to Crosswave Tower for the first time since Ivy arrived. He wore a suit, yes, but he felt different inside it. Like a man trying on a version of himself that no longer fit perfectly. His assistant Marin met him at the elevator with a tablet and a tight expression. Mr. Cross, she said quietly. The board called an emergency session for noon. Ethan didn't look surprised. Who requested it? Marin hesitated. Lucas Grant? Of course. Lucas Grant, Ethan's cousin by marriage, CFO by title, rival by instinct. A man who smiled like a handshake and moved like a slow knife. Ethan nodded once. Clear my calendar. In the elevator, as the numbers climbed, Ethan's phone buzzed. A message from Mrs. Rowan Ivy ate her whole breakfast. She left you a note by your coffee cup. Ethan read it twice. Then he put the phone away and stepped into the polished, cold heartbeat of his empire. The boardroom was glass and steel high above the city. 12 seats, 12 lives attached to Ethan's decisions. Most of them liked him when he behaved like a machine. Lucas sat near the center, posture relaxed, expression carefully concerned. Ethan, Lucas said, standing. Thank you for coming. Ethan didn't sit right away. Start. A few board members exchanged glances. Lucas folded his hands. We've received inquiries. Inquiries, Ethan repeated. Rumors, another member said, more blunt. About a child in your home. Ethan looked around the table, meeting eyes one by one. Yes, he said. A child needed emergency shelter. I provided it. Everything is documented. Legal counsel is engaged. A woman on the board, Eleanor Pierce, spoke softly. No one doubts your generosity, Ethan. Lucas leaned in, voice velvet. But perception matters. And the timing, right as we're negotiating the heliosphere acquisition, raises questions. Ethan finally sat. My personal life has never affected performance. Lucas nodded as if agreeing while quietly sharpening the blade. Under normal circumstances, I'd agree. But this isn't normal. A child in your penthouse, your wife moving out, family services in your home. The press loves stories like this. Ethan's eyes went cold. How do you know my wife moved out? Lucas's smile stayed in place. Boston society is small. Ethan didn't argue with that. He argued with something else. Let's be honest, Ethan said. This isn't about governance. This is about appetite. A few breaths caught. Lucas gave a wounded expression. I'm concerned about you. No, Ethan replied quietly. You're concerned about my seat. The room stiffened. Eleanor Pierce cleared her throat. Ethan, the board is asking for reassurance. That's all. Ethan leaned forward, voice calm, controlled, and unmistakably final. Here is your reassurance, the heliosphere deal stays on track. Crosswave's forecasts stay intact. And my home life will be handled lawfully and privately. Lucas lifted his hands slightly. No one wants to invade your privacy? You already did, Ethan interrupted, not raising his voice. Silence. Ethan continued. If the board wants to discuss my performance, bring data. If you want to discuss my judgment, look at 12 consecutive profitable quarters. If this meeting is about gossip, end it. Lucas's gaze sharpened. The company cannot afford instability at the top. Ethan's eyes didn't blink. Then it's lucky the top is stable. A murmur moved through the room, uneasy admiration, reluctant respect. Ethan stood buttoning his jacket slowly. I have another meeting, he said, looking at Lucas. A meeting where someone's future matters more than market perception. Lucas's smile thinned. A child's presence in your home could become leverage, Ethan. Whether you like it or not. Ethan paused at the door. Then try to use it, he said softly, and see what happens. He left the boardroom without looking back. In the elevator down, his phone buzzed again. A photo from Mrs. Rowan Ivy's note written in careful letters. I didn't touch your photo. I just wanted you to know I saw it. Ethan stared at the message until the elevator doors opened, and for the first time the boardroom felt smaller than a child's handwriting. That evening, the knock came again. Not the doorbell, an intentional knock. 3 soft taps. Mrs. Rowan opened the door while Ethan was still removing his tie. A woman stood in the doorway with a notebook and a posture that said she didn't scare easily. Mr. Cross, she asked. My name is Sloane Mercer. I'm a journalist. Ethan's instincts rose like a wall. No, he said immediately. Sloane didn't flinch. I expected that. I'm not here for a quote. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Then why are you here? She took a breath. Because someone offered me money to destroy you. And they specifically mentioned Ivy. The air changed. Ethan stepped closer, voice low. Who? Sloane's gaze held steady. Lucas Grant. Ethan didn't move. Somewhere behind him, Ivy's footsteps paused in the hallway, quiet as a thought. Ethan lowered his voice further. Ivy is not part of your story. I agree, Sloane said quickly. That's why I'm standing here and not publishing anything. I don't do paid narratives. Ethan studied her face. He'd seen hundreds like her hungry for headlines. She didn't have that look. Her eyes were sharp but not greedy. What do you want? Ethan asked. The truth, she said. Not for the front page. For leverage against the lie. Ethan's jaw tightened. Show me. Sloane pulled out her phone and played an audio clip, short-clipped, unmistakable. Lucas's voice smooth and confident. If the story runs, the system will have to step in. And when it does, Ethan will spiral. The board will act. Sloane stopped the audio. Ethan's hand clenched at his side, not in anger at Sloane, but at the cruelty of using a child as a chess piece. You recorded this? Ethan asked. I have sources, Sloane replied. And I have rules. I won't publish Ivy's name. I won't show her face. I won't turn her into a spectacle. But I will expose adult manipulation if you let me. Ethan's mind moved faster than it had in weeks. Not for profit, for protection. What happens if I refuse? He asked. Sloane's voice softened. Then Lucas finds someone else with fewer rules. Ethan looked down the hallway. Ivy, he called gently. You can stay in your room. This is grown-up talk. Ivy appeared anyway, small and steady in the doorway. I can go, she said politely. Sloane's eyes flicked to the child, then away immediately, respecting boundaries without being told. Ethan knelt. You don't have to leave because adults are talking. Ivy swallowed. I don't like when adults talk, and then everything changes. Ethan's throat tightened. Then we'll do it differently, he said. We'll talk where you can still feel safe. He stood, turning back to Sloane. One condition. Name it, she said. No identifying details. No photos. No interviews with Ivy. Not now. Not ever. Sloane nodded instantly. Agreed. Ethan paced once, then stopped, decision landing like a door locking. If Lucas is weaponizing this, Ethan said, then the only defense is daylight. Sloane lifted her notebook. Then tell me the truth. Ethan looked toward Ivy again, toward the quiet child who had changed the shape of his house and the shape of his heart. The truth, Ethan said, voice rougher now, is that she didn't ask me for anything. She just stood there, and I finally saw what I'd been refusing to see. Sloane listened without interrupting. Ethan continued, "And if Lucas thinks he can use her to break me, he's wrong." Sloane closed her notebook slowly. "Then we're on the same side," she said. Ethan didn't say thank you. He didn't trust easy gratitude anymore. He only said, "We protect her first." Ivy spoke from the hallway, small voice, clear as a bell. "Is she going to make me famous?" Ethan turned, startled. Then he smiled, soft, real. "No," he said. "She's going to make sure the adults can't lie about you." Ivy blinked. "Okay." Then after a pause, "I don't like lies." "Neither do I," Ethan said. And in that moment, the fight stopped being corporate. It became personal, quiet, unbreakable. The courthouse was smaller than Ethan expected. No towering columns, no drama, just a quiet room with worn wood benches and a judge who looked like she'd seen too many endings to be impressed by noise. Ivy sat beside Ethan, feet not quite touching the floor. She wore a navy sweater Mrs. Rowan had chosen, simple, soft hers. Her hands rested folded in her lap, steady. The judge spoke kindly, clearly. "This isn't about wealth," she said. "It's about stability." Ethan nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't perform. A report was summarized. A home evaluation noted. Ivy was addressed, gently, directly. "Do you feel safe where you are?" the judge asked. Ivy didn't look at Ethan before answering. "Yes," she said. "Do you feel heard?" A pause. "Yes," Ivy repeated. "Even when I don't talk much." The judge smiled faintly. No accusations followed. No raised voices. Only careful consideration. When the decision came, it arrived without fanfare. "Temporary guardianship is approved," the judge said, with continued oversight. Ethan exhaled slowly. Ivy didn't smile. Not yet. Outside the courtroom, the hallway felt brighter. So Ivy said quietly, "I'm not leaving today." "No," Ethan replied. "You're not." She nodded once, as if confirming something she'd already begun to believe. "Okay," she said. "That's good." And for the first time, the future didn't feel like a door waiting to close. The article ran 2 days later. It didn't name Ivy. It didn't show her face. It didn't use words like rescue or miracle. It spoke instead of systems power and adults who tried to turn care into leverage. Lucas Grant resigned by Friday morning. The board issued statements. Lawyers exchanged letters. The noise surged and then slowly lost interest. At home, none of it mattered much. Ivy sat at the kitchen table, carefully drawing a house with blue walls and too many windows. "Is it over?" she asked. Ethan considered the question. "The loud part is," she nodded. "I like it better when things are quiet." Margaret sent a message that afternoon. Brief, civil. She wished Ivy well. She wished Ethan clarity. Ethan didn't respond immediately. He didn't need to. That evening, Ivy helped Mrs. Rowan set the table. She placed each napkin carefully, aligning edges. "I used to rush," she said, "in case I had to leave." Mrs. Rowan smiled. "No rush here, dear." Ivy looked at Ethan. "You're still here." "Yes," he said. "I am." She seemed to weigh that, then returned to her drawing. Outside, the city continued indifferent, unstoppable. Inside, something fragile had settled into place. Not forever, not promised, but real. Spring arrived without announcement. The river thawed, the light softened. Ivy grew taller just a little, enough to notice. They walked through the park on a Sunday afternoon, Ethan's phone forgotten in his pocket. Ivy kicked at pebbles, choosing which ones deserved attention. "Mr. Ethan," she asked. "Yes. At school they asked me who you are, and what did you say?" She hesitated. "I said, 'You're my person.'" Ethan stopped walking. "I can change it," she added quickly. If that's too much. He crouched to her level. Is it what you want to say? She nodded. Yes. Then it's not too much, he said. They stood there for a moment, the city distant, the present steady. Can I call you something else? Ivy asked, almost shy. What would you like? She thought carefully. Dad. The word landed softly, firmly. Ethan felt his throat tighten, not with pain, but recognition. I'd like that, he said. Very much. Ivy smiled then. Not small, not careful, real. They walked on her hand, slipping naturally into his. No cameras, no applause, no promises shouted into the future. Just two people choosing quietly to belong. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan Cross knew exactly where home was. Did this story leave a lasting impression on you? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment, rate it from 1 to 10, and tap the end screen to see another heartwarming story waiting for you.